Have you ever realized that some relationships begin to feel more like chores than cherished connections? If you're in your 70s or older, you've probably dedicated years, maybe even decades, to caring for others, raising a family, supporting a partner, running a household. And now, you might be asking yourself what life would feel like with more calm, more space to exhale, and more moments just for you. This isn't a conversation about isolation or giving up on love, it's about something deeper. It's about the surprising truth that for many people over 70, living alone can actually bring more freedom, better health, and greater happiness than staying in a relationship that drains your emotional energy. In the next few minutes, you'll hear 7 powerful reasons why choosing to be single after 70 might not only be okay, it might be the best choice you never expected to make. Whether you're divorced, widowed, or simply choosing solitude, this message is for you. You're about to see how this chapter of life can be about growth instead of retreat, about gaining emotional peace, rediscovering energy, and finding joy in the quiet moments. Stay with me until the end, because what we explore here might give you a completely new lens through which to see your life. Let's begin. Reason 1. Emotional burnout from decades of adjusting. By the time you reach your 70s, you've likely spent 40 to 50 years adapting to someone else's patterns, needs, routines, and moods. Even in loving partnerships, that kind of ongoing compromise takes a toll. This isn't about pointing fingers. It's about acknowledging that the emotional reserves you once used for smoothing things over or making sacrifices may be nearly gone. What you used to tolerate, an impatient tone being dismissed, constantly yielding, now feels heavier and harder to absorb. After 70, many people realize they no longer have the buffer they once did for those daily frictions. But when the relationship ends, especially one filled with endless adjustments, that tension lifts. Suddenly, you're free to eat what you want, sleep when you choose, watch what you love, and live how you feel, all without negotiating. That's not selfishness, that's healing. Take someone like Ruth, age 74. She was married for 52 years, always working around her husband's firm views. After his passing, she started making choices for herself, many for the first time, and she reflected, "I didn't know how much of myself I gave away until I stopped giving it." That kind of quiet freedom is something many single seniors talk about, not with regret, but with gratitude. It's not about bitterness. It's about finally recognizing what you need emotionally and honoring it. At this stage, that clarity is life giving. When you stop people pleasing and start choosing peace, something deep inside you changes. Your nervous system relaxes, your sleep improves, you smile more without even knowing why. Because now you're living in a way that finally fits who you are. And after 70, that might be the greatest gift of all. Reason 2, minor tension becomes major discomfort. As we get older, our tolerance for conflict shrinks. What once felt like playful teasing can feel harsh and unsettling in your 70s. Those little quirks that used to amuse you, how they load the dishwasher wrong, or how they always nod off during your favorite shows, start to wear you down. It's not fun anymore, it's frustrating. Why? Because aging makes us crave calm. Your body and mind don't bounce back from emotional stress like they used to. You long for peace, not pressure. Even a sarcastic tone or a heavy sigh from across the room can feel like emotional clutter pressing on your spirit. The other person may not have changed that much, but you have. Your system no longer tolerates what once felt normal. And when daily interactions feel like subtle battles, solitude begins to feel like sanctuary. That's why many people over 70 find that being alone doesn't mean being lonely. It means being free. Frank, 76, said after his divorce at 68, the silence in his home felt strange at first. But in time, it became comforting. "I thought I needed someone to talk to all the time," he told me, "but it turns out I just needed someone who didn't argue with me all the time." And he's far from the only one. Studies reveal that older adults often experience greater contentment in solitude compared to younger generations. Why? Because they've lived through the noise, years of conflict, caretaking, and constant demands. They've learned that silence isn't empty, it's restorative, So if you catch yourself tiptoeing around your partner more than walking side by side in joy, that's not necessarily a failure. It might be your soul saying, "I'm done negotiating peace. I just want to live in it." If you're still watching and finding these truths resonate, drop a number 2 in the comments so I know you're with me. And if you haven't yet, consider subscribing and turning on the bell so you never miss future content. Your support allows us to keep bringing you thoughtful insights to encourage and empower your journey. Now let's keep going. Reason 3, caregiving tips the emotional balance. By the time you're in your 70s, chances are one of you isn't as capable, physically, emotionally, or both. It's just part of aging. But what people don't often talk about is how caregiving, no matter how loving, can slowly change the relationship dynamic. What once felt like a partnership becomes more like a duty. And when that duty falls mostly on one person, resentment begins to grow silently. Take Martha and Bill, married 49 years. When Bill's memory began to decline, Martha naturally stepped up. She handled his medication, repeated his appointments, managed the paperwork. At first, it came from love, but 6 months in, she found herself exhaling heavily before every task. Not because she didn't love him, but because she missed being his wife. Not his nurse, his reminder, his lifeline. That gradual shift from equal partner to full-time caregiver brings a kind of emotional weariness that's hard to explain. Unlike earlier in life, you don't have the same reserves to bounce back. You catch yourself thinking, when is it my turn to rest? And when that answer never comes, something in you starts to close down. Sometimes the frustration isn't even aimed at your spouse, it's at the helplessness, the loss of freedom, the quiet grief for the life you used to share. You feel guilty for the resentment, but your body tells the truth, you're depleted, and every chore, every reminder, every sigh is a mourning of what once was. Love doesn't vanish, but it gets buried beneath the weight of roles, obligations, and fatigue. That's when solitude can begin to feel like relief, not because you've stopped caring, but because you're finally able to breathe. That's also why some older adults choose separation, not from bitterness, but from the need to preserve themselves. Because sometimes, loving someone means knowing when to let go. Reason 4, the slow fading of curiosity and shared excitement. One of the key ingredients in lasting relationships is curiosity. About each other, about life, about the world. But over time, especially after 70, that sense of shared discovery can slowly fade. You start each day the same, sit in familiar chairs, talk about the same aches, eat the same meals. The routine that once brought comfort now feels dull. And it's not because either person is boring, it's that neither one is bringing fresh energy to the table. Over the years, the lack of novelty starts to wear on the connection. Curiosity is like fuel, it keeps the engine of engagement running. It's what sparks a spontaneous "let's try this," or an excited "did you see that?" Without it, even simple conversations can start to feel like heavy lifting. You ask what's for dinner and get the same tired answer. You suggest going out and hear maybe later. The silence between you is no longer filled with peace, it's filled with indifference. Many seniors don't even realize it's happening. They assume this is just what aging in a relationship looks like. But that quiet resignation builds tension, because deep down, one of you might still hunger for surprise and stimulation, while the other has made peace with repetition. And that gap between desires becomes a source of frustration, not just with your partner, but with yourself. You begin to wonder, when did I stop growing? Or worse, why am I shrinking to match their pace? Just ask Betty, age 74. "I still wanted to learn Italian," Betty said, "but my husband just wanted to rewatch the same TV shows." That's when she realized they weren't curious about the same things anymore. And that kind of emotional gap can feel even lonelier than being physically alone. This is what many people discover after 70, that single life isn't about rejection or bitterness, it's about rediscovery. It's about reclaiming the spark that says, "I still want to grow." Waking up and feeling like there's more life to live, more horizons to explore. For some, that quiet autonomy becomes more nourishing than the comfort of a stale connection. If you're still here and this message is resonating, drop a number 4 in the comments so I know you're watching. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell. Your support lets us keep creating meaningful content to guide and uplift you. Let's continue. Reason 5, the weight of emotional debts. As couples age, it's common for unresolved hurts to linger, not because anyone's heartless, but because life has a way of moving forward while brushing things under the rug. Over time, we choose silence over conflict, but what doesn't get said doesn't go away, it sinks deeper. Maybe your partner once belittled your dreams, dismissed your efforts, or made decisions without your voice in the room. Maybe you carried more of the emotional or physical load, all while telling yourself it's fine, let it go. But those emotional IOU, they don't fade. They settle like sediment in the heart. By the time you're in your 70s, with more stillness, fewer distractions, those quiet scores start rising to the surface. Suddenly, you notice how little gratitude you received, how apologies never came, how much you've given without being seen. Resentment at this stage isn't loud, it's subtle, a kind of quiet disconnection. You still make the meals, still say goodnight, still sit side by side, but something inside feels colder, less generous. That's emotional bookkeeping, where your spirit silently tallies every unspoken slight. And after decades, that ledger can feel impossibly full. Harold, 78, said, "I spent 35 years putting her first. I didn't complain, but now, when she acts like I still owe her more, something in me just clenches. I've been swallowing how I feel for decades, and I'm tired of it." That's how resentment builds in later life, not with explosive arguments, but with soft, chronic sorrow. Unless those old wounds are acknowledged, they begin to shadow every conversation, turning even kindness into obligation. Retirement offers time, but time doesn't heal what's been buried. It only magnifies it, and for some, that emotional clarity becomes the moment they realize peace might only come with space. Reason 6, changes in identity and life direction. When we're younger, identity is tied to our jobs, our roles, our usefulness. We're parents, workers, caretakers, providers. But by 70, those roles begin to fall away. Children are grown, work is behind us. Bodies and energy shift, and suddenly, you're looking at a quieter life and asking, who am I without all that? For some, it's a doorway to joy. They rediscover nature, art, or community. But for others, it's disorienting. You may feel like a guest in your own life. And when you're living with a partner whose pace or direction no longer aligns with yours, it creates tension. Maybe you find comfort in slow mornings, gardening, or writing. But your partner is restless, buying things, constantly scrolling, needing stimulation. Or maybe it's the reverse. You're the one reaching for new meaning, and they've already resigned to routine. The result? Subtle judgment, not spoken but felt. In sighs, eye rolls, or growing silence. You start to feel misunderstood. You sit at the same table, but it feels like you're miles apart. This is what psychologists call identity drift, when two people, once closely aligned, begin to evolve in different ways. Not out of malice, but because life's transitions reshape us. You're still under the same roof, but your hearts are on different paths. You may not be falling out of love. You may simply be growing in different directions. And the deeper that drift becomes, the more you question whether closeness is still possible. You're not misunderstood because you're doing something wrong. You're misunderstood because you're trying to grow, to adapt, to make sense of this new season of life. And the painful part is when your partner either doesn't notice or doesn't care. Eleanor, 74, said it best, "After my retirement, I started painting again. It brought me a joy I hadn't felt in years. But every time I showed my husband a new piece, he barely looked up. That's when I realized I wasn't looking for praise. I was looking for him to see me again, but he couldn't. Or wouldn't. It's not always neglect by intention. Sometimes your spouse is fighting their own quiet battles, and neither of you knows how to reach across the silence. But over time, that emotional distance starts to feel like indifference. And resentment grows where understanding used to live. If you're still here and this resonates, comment the number 6 below to let me know you're watching. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so and turn on notifications. Your support helps us keep creating the kind of content that informs, uplifts, and tells the truth others won't. Let's move forward. Reason 7. The fading appreciation for invisible efforts. By the time you're in your 70s or 80s, you've likely built a quiet routine of things you do for your partner, things they don't even see anymore: refilling the pill box, making the coffee just right, turning the lights off before bed, remembering to pick up the right toothpaste, or reminding them to call the grandkids. These are not dramatic gestures. They're the little threads that hold life together. But here's what stings: over time, they stop being appreciated and start being expected. And when something becomes expected, it often becomes invisible. You might not even notice the emotional toll until one day you're standing at the kitchen sink, folding their laundry, and a quiet thought creeps in. Would they even notice if I stopped? That's when the fatigue speaks louder than your love. You didn't ask for applause, you didn't want a trophy, but even love, real, quiet, enduring love, needs oxygen. It needs to be seen, and when you finally say something, you might hear, "Well, I never asked you to do all that." That's the kind of reply that cuts deep, because you weren't doing it for credit. You did it because that's what love looked like for you. But love without appreciation, it starts to feel like labor, and labor without thanks, that leaves a bruise. Resentment doesn't always come from betrayal. Sometimes it grows from omission, from all the thank yous that were never said, from all the care that went unseen, from the quiet question that keeps echoing: when did I become invisible? Harold, now 81, shared this: "My wife used to thank me every time I fixed something. Now it's like I'm just supposed to. One day, I stopped fixing things altogether. I just wanted to see if she'd notice." That's the danger. When appreciation fades, love turns into obligation, and obligation without warmth will always breed resentment. What starts as love often turns into routine. And if we're not careful, routine hardens into resentment, not because of hatred, but because of years of small disappointments and things left unsaid. If you saw even a glimpse of yourself in today's message, you're not alone. These feelings don't mean love is gone. They mean you still want love to be real. You still need to be seen, and that's the gift of aging clarity. You begin to notice what no longer works, and maybe, just maybe, you find the courage to speak up. Whether you've been together 50 years or slowly drifting under the same roof, it's not too late to change the energy. Small acts matter: a thank you, a real conversation, a willingness to grow together again, not just grow old. Because even at 70, even at 80, healing is still possible. If you've ever felt like your partner doesn't really get you anymore, maybe it's time to gently help them see who you've become. Thanks for joining us today. We'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment and share one thing you learned and how you plan to use it in your own life. Your stories matter, your voice matters, and your support helps us keep creating content that speaks to real lives and real hearts. Please like, subscribe, and share this message with someone who might need it. We'll see you in the next video.